this is Laura Knight, and this is episode 4 of my interview series, Welcome Guest. Today we have novelist L.B. Ann. Thank you so much for joining me. I would like to give a brief introduction to who you are, and then we can hop into the conversation. L.B. Ann is the author of over 30 diverse novels. She's a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. L.B. Ann is a literacy and mental health advocate. Her goal is to ensure all children of color can see themselves in each genre of literature. She believes there is a book out there for even the most reluctant reader, and she aims to write it.
That's right.
That's wonderful because, I was a reluctant reader. When I see you launch a book title on your social media, I get so excited because I think, oh my goodness, that's so imaginative. That's so inspirational. I can read off some of your titles. The Secret of Shadow and Light, Gemma Kane, Skywriter, Lolo and Winkle Go Viral, The Girl Who Captured the Sun. You have been writing books for a while now. How did you start publishing, and what's life like being an author?
I started publishing about 5 or 6 years ago, but I started out in young adult fiction. I switched over to middle grade 3 years ago, and I love reading. I've always loved reading. So I was reading a science fiction novel by A.G. Riddle 6 years ago, and it ignited something in me. I just had to write, and it was just so good. So that's how it got started. So now I'm a full-time author. That's how I release so many books, because I'm always writing. I have an overactive imagination. And maybe it's because as a kid, my mom, she didn't really allow us to watch television. All we did was read.
Cool.
It was like in me. I read a book a day in middle school. So I just love reading, and being able to reach kids that way. You can't imagine how many emails and DMs I get from kids. You're my favorite author. I want to write because of you, and things like that. It's awesome.
And then when you're writing books, do you focus just solely on one, or do you have multiple projects going on at the same time?
I have multiple. Okay, so while I'm writing one book, I may get an idea for another. A lot of authors don't do this, but I will stop what I'm doing, write whatever it is that idea is. It may be 500 words, and put it aside. Go back to the book I was writing on. I may get another idea. So when people ask, how do you release so many books in a year? I've already put in so many books to the side. And while I'm working on one novel, I may get even more ideas for one of those books, and I'll continue. So by the time I actually start working on that novel that's to the side, there's like a third of a book there, or at least a really good outline. So also, while I'm working on a book, I'm this upbeat, happy person, right? So, but when it comes to the parts of the books that are where there's drama, where there's a battle, where someone has to be evil, it brings me down, because I have to go into that mode. So to get out of that, I'll go and work on a happy book and then come back to that book. So yeah, it's always more than one book.
Do you outline, or do you just kind of see where the story takes you?
I'm a pantser. I just see where it takes me, but there are times, I think, when I've already worked on a little of the book, when I've had an idea, that is more of an outline. But for the most part, no, I just type.
How many stories do you have right now drafted up?
I believe I have 8.
Wow.
I could actually release a book a month this year if I put that kind of work into it. But there's 8 that have some good stuff going on that I can turn into a novel. I tell other authors, when you cut things from your book, don't just delete it. Put that in a file. That stuff you may be able to use later in another novel.
So you visit schools, right?
Yes, I do author visits at school. I am so glad that I can actually go back into schools now rather than a Zoom, which the Zoom meetings were amazing. But to be in the library with the students, face to face, with, seeing their smiles and engagement, that's amazing.
Do you think there's something that goes back to like your childhood or being an avid reader? Why is that audience something that you gravitate to?
I don't know. I love the middle grade audience. The middle grade kids, I don't know, I relate to them. Maybe I'm mentally stuck there or something. I know that I've always felt like they are underrepresented as far in everything. Like if when you see things on television that are targeted like a commercial, it's for the younger age group or the older age group. But the middle grade, it's like, who's focusing on them? I'm gonna focus on them. And also, when I was their age, there weren't many books with children of color in them. So I wanted to make sure that children of color can see themselves in these books.
Tell me about this latest book that you released called Things About Dragonflies.
That is exciting. It's my first time writing historical fiction, so I was terrified. I was terrified to release it. When I sent it to my editor, I literally said, I'm terrified. And she knew I was, so she skimmed through it before she actually got down to editing, and she said, I am so excited about what I'm seeing. So that made me feel so good. But it's about the runaway slaves that ran to Florida in 1812 and their relationship with the Seminole Indians. And it was actually Spanish Florida in 1812. And this is a series that's going to go through 1835 because there's a lot that goes on from 1812 to 1835. And it's told in a form of a story that kids can relate to. And going from the feedback I'm getting already, I'm just so excited about this.
You know, it's interesting because I'm on the West Coast in California, and I kind of reflect back on, you know, my education and the American history that's presented to us and Native American tribes. And to a certain extent, like, you know, there's bits of pieces of information that I'm aware of, but the Seminole Tribe is something that I didn't know anything about the details.
And listen, I was watching something, I don't watch much television, so it may have been something I heard or on social media, but someone said slavery wasn't the same in Florida as it was in the rest of the country. And I said, that's not true. Why did he say that? So I started researching it and found out that slavery ended in Florida in like 16, I can't think of the exact year, 16 something, but it was Spanish Florida at the time. And so slaves not only ran north, but they ran south to Spanish Florida with escaped slaves. And the Seminole Indians, they owned slaves, but it wasn't the same. They lived in separate communities. Former slaves had to do was give them a portion of their crops each year. The former slaves had thriving villages. They were translators between the Spanish, the Indians, the Americans. There's just so much I had no idea. And the Seminole Indians are made up of 3 tribes of Indians, including Creek Indians, which I'm part Creek Indian. So I'm like, does everyone else know about this and I didn't?
It's really interesting too, just as the Seminole Tribe end up finding kind of their own way of living, that they're also so business minded and they thrive so well in their communities. And even today,
they have a powerful story, which I'm not going to tell, because if I cannot get the permission from them to do that, I won't, because I respect all Indigenous peoples. I know how private they are. I'm only going to tell the portion that intertwines with African American history. So that's what I'm doing. I did email them and tried to contact them, but there was no response. So I'm like, okay, they want to keep it private. That's good. So I won't go any further than that, but I am still donating a portion of the proceeds to their museum here in Florida.
How deep and far did you had to get into the history of like just writing the environment and the storyline for your main character?
It was 2 years of research that I did for this book before I started writing. And then because I almost felt like I need to write a separate book for adults if I had the time, because there's so much I could not put in the book because it's for kids. Like there were a couple scenes I asked my editor, is this okay? I mean, it's for kids, but is this okay? And she was like, yeah, you're just telling what happened, so it's fine. But there's so much more. I'm hoping the novel will pause, create conversations and research with families. They can research further together. And there's a teacher's guide also on the website that will help.
In your opinion, what do you think is the importance of writing historical fiction?
Because it's a glimpse back in time. And for so many years, we were only given a portion of what happened, or even not the truth of what really happened years ago. So this is putting some truth to it, but also making a story that kids can follow. And the funny thing is, I have more adults reading it right now than I think kids, because they want to know about this part of history.
Exactly.
And it's so very interesting. And there's so much more to tell. That's why I had to make it a series.
And it's a courageous tale. So what do you want the takeaway for a young person reading it?
Okay, so there's like two stories in one. Because it's in present day, and then it goes back in time. And then at the end, it comes back to present day. So the girl in present time, she becomes more courageous because of learning Tallulah's story from 1812. So I hope it gives readers courage, a sense of pride in where they've come from.
And a sense of resilience.
Right.
Your books are inspiring. They are just tremendous, the amount of work that you've produced. And I'm so happy to have you here. I'm going to share all your social media and handles down below. You can find your books on your website and Amazon.
Yes, and Five Things About Dragonflies is in Barnes and Nobles also. That's my first series that's wide, you know what wide is. Not just in Amazon, because I wanted to make sure I could get into as many hands as possible.
I'm looking forward to more of your work and then an extension of this entire series. Thank you, LB, and I appreciate the time. And again, you know, I think it's amazing what you're doing, and you really have a beautiful gift.
Thank you. Thank you so much.